So a very good evening to one and all present over here. Namaskar, Director Sir, Dean Sir.
Namaskar, good evening. Good evening to you.
Namaskar, Tirthankar Sir. A very good morning to you over there.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Das.
Good evening to everyone. Thank you.
So I welcome you all in this long 5-day FDP program on behavioral finance and investment management. I express my deepest sense of gratitude for taking out your valuable time and interest to be a part of it. I heartily give you a warm welcome to our institution, even though in a virtual mode, and would seek to your presence in the future. I thank all our revered dignitaries who are personality of eminence, our resource persons, for taking out their valuable time and gracing the occasion. Thank you so much for being here. It means a lot. I would welcome all our participants for showing their interest for this FDP on the theme behavioral finance and investment management. So this discipline helps us in understanding how financial decisions around things, be it investment, payment, risk, personal debt, should greatly influenced by human emotions and biases. So is that the cognitive dimensions, the biases affect our decision in terms of financial decision making? So this is what we would, while structuring the program, I was keenly trying to include the varied dimensions, starting with the basic to the advanced level of behavioral finance. So I would like to welcome our Director Sir and Dean Sir also to this August gathering. Thank you, sir, for taking out your time. So, but before we begin, let us have a quick look to this video, a virtual tour to our school. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I wish, provided things normalizes, please do visit to our campus. Now, I would like to request our Dean Sir, Professor S.N. Mishra Sir, to welcome and to set the context. Professor S.N. Mishra Sir has a long span experience of more than 30 years. He did his PhD in economics on the challenges before self-reliance in critical defense technology, a pioneer area on the subject. Initially, he was in the Indian Economic Service, where he did his cost-benefit analysis of World Bank projects and handled International Development Agency BECS. He was an officer in the Indian Defense Account Service from 1979 to 2012, where he served as a Director of Finance with DRDO, Financial Advisor, and Joint Secretary to Indian Air Force and Joint Aerospace. He has authored the Defense Procurement Manual 2005, drawing encomiums from the Prime Minister's office. Post-retirement, he teaches economics and constitutional law at KIT University and contributes handsomely to prestigious journal on development economics, defense, and public policy. He is a regular columnist in Orissa Post and speaks passionately in important fora. Thank you so much, sir, for being with us. Over to you, sir.
Good afternoon, friends. On behalf of our venerable founder, Professor Achyutananda Samanta, founder of KIT and KIS University, our most dynamic and respected director, Professor Mahapatra, Saroj Mahapatra, all the faculty members, and on behalf of the entire university, I welcome all the delegates to this extremely well-conceived and well-timed 5-day seminar, workshop on behavioral finance. As you all know, friends, behavioral finance is a new genre in finance and economics. It had its seeds planted by Daniel Kahneman in 2002. He was the person who got Nobel Prize in economics. For the first time, he brought out how isn't really compatible with many of the actions of the individual. So irrationality, thinking differently from a clear rational structure was what Daniel was essentially trying to highlight. Then subsequently, the US financial crisis in 2007, 2008 very clearly underlined the importance of irrational exuberance. As you all know, Alan Greenspan, the Federal Reserve Bank governor, very rightly brought out how the crisis was actually an expectation. It is irrational exuberance on part of the investors. So therefore, this is an area in which a lot of work is being done because the traditional expectation in economics that it stands on rationality, efficiency, and optimality, the three pillars on which economics and finance sit, can often be on very tenuous ground. So therefore, I'm extremely happy that Professor Sikta Singh, our very tenacious and very outstanding associate professor, has got this project, and she has been anchoring this project and handholding the participants on an extremely important subject of discussion, and which has also a lot of practical implication. We are also extremely delighted to have Mr. Tirthankar Das. Good morning to you, sir. Who is the executive director in JP Morgan and Chase, to be today in our midst as the guest of honor. Before JP Morgan, he worked for Credit Suisse and Sangha Trading. He has more than 20 years of experience in finance and technology, and currently, of course, he is leading the digital transformation initiatives across JP Morgan Chase Digital. He's a thought leader, driving innovation and change in consumer banking, and he's providing leadership to diversity and equality goals. He is driving technology platform transformation with the cloud and application modernization initiatives to reduce time to market for financial products and services. On behalf of all of us, good morning to you, sir, and we are very, very delighted that you have agreed to deliver your thoughts, interact with your thoughts today as the guest of honor. With this, let me request our director, Professor Saroj Mahapatra, to kindly share his thoughts on this, on the eve of this 5-day seminar, which is going to really kickstart from tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your address. I would now like to welcome our director, sir, Professor S.K. Mahapatra. Sir has been the director of School of Management. Before that, sir has worked as a director with Behaviourial School of Business at NCR since 2016. Sir has donned many hats with distinction in his long professional career spanning 30 years in industry and 8 years in academics. He has held leadership positions in renowned corporate groups in India like Tata, Bajaj, Jindal, including Navratna PSU Sale and multinational POSCO. He has also taught at XIMB, and he is in the corporate sector as the President HR at Bajaj Power Ventures and its strategic HR intervention. Early in his career, he worked with Steel Authority of India, starting his career, and he has honed in IR and employee engagement skills, working hard into the senior management level. Sir has contributed handsomely for the development of KIT. I thank you, sir, for taking out your valuable time and being with us. Over to you, sir. Sir, please unmute yourself.
Thank you, Professor Sikta. Most esteemed Mr. Tirthankar Das, our chief guest of this inaugural session. We are all waiting to actually listen to your pearls of wisdom. So I feel like an odd person to stand in between. However, given this opportunity, I would like to extend a warm welcome to you. On behalf of the entire senior management team of the university, on behalf of Honorable Founder, the Chancellor, the Vice Chancellor, Pro-Vice Chancellor, Registrar, and my entire team of colleagues at School of Management. Just to give you an idea as to this program, Sikta must have already spoken to all of you, and this is for all the speakers who are present here and all the participants who are present here. This week is called the FDP week at School of, at the university. In fact, early morning today, I think there was this yoga session with which the day had started. Yesterday, we had the week-long university-level FDP program inaugurated, which is for our in-house faculties primarily. So all the 1,000-odd faculties of the entire university, they participate in the forenoon, entire forenoon for the coming week from starting today, faculty development program. And these are school-specific events. We have only common inaugural as well as the evaluation. In the school-specific program, different subjects we deliberate pertaining to how to enhance our domain expertise and all that. But simultaneously, thanks to Professor Sikta, one of our very energetic faculty of economics here, she has been successful this second year in succession. She has been able to persuade the AICT to award a FDP program to us, to be the nodal center, to be the hub, and through which we run this program for the entire teaching community all over the country. So for this particular FDP is very special because it has participants from different institutions from all over India. So to that extent, this is a very special program which School of Management offers. And so I welcome all the participants, and I would like to express my gratitude to all the speakers. And normally it's my way, I always mention the names of the speakers. So I'd just like to mention their name and welcome them. Dr. Ashish Gupta, Dr. Amitabh Gupta, I think you'll be present here. Okay, Sikta, you can help me with the presentation also. Mr. Amitabh Gupta, if you can move over to him. Okay, yeah, Mr. Amitabh. First day, in fact, we have Sikta is the first faculty. I took the advantage of she being my colleague and already being mentioned. So she will be in the first session, and then Dr. Amitabh Gupta, who is a professor of finance, a very eminent person from the University of Delhi South Campus. Then we have Professor Dr. Jitendra Mahakud of IIT Kharagpur. Then in day 2, we have Mr. Umang Kejriwal. He is a corporate trainer actually of Finland Labs. And an interesting Finland Labs, if you see, they are one of those edutech companies. You know, they are making waves these days by bringing skill to actually the classroom. Then we have Mrs. Venu Maheshwari. She is the CFO and principal advisor of FinScholars Wealth, if I have pronounced it rightly. If I have pronounced wrongly, you'll forgive me, ma'am. And then we have Dr. Prabhakar Sahu, who is a professor IG of Indira Gandhi, I think this is IG, New Delhi. Then on day 3, yeah, and on day 3, we have Chartered Accountant Mr. Sachin Agrawal. He is from SEBI and he's an ISM trainer. We have Mr. Umang Kejriwal. He is a corporate trainer. Again, Finland Labs, we have already spoken about him. Then we have Mr. Ashutosh Kumar. He is a global head transaction banking sales at Standard Chartered Bank. Then on day 4, we have Dr. Arun Jalka. He is a professor at Delhi University, and Dr. Tapash Mishra, who is professor head of banking and finance at Southampton University, UK. Then on day 5, we have Dr. Devashish Das, co-founder of Human Links, and he was briefly my predecessor here. He was the director of Kids School of Management earlier also. He specializes in development of simulation training. And Mr. Chandrakant Deoda, he's a famous yoga trainer, probably something which we are starting on the day of yoga. We should finish with yoga. And so these are our faculties. And for this program, I welcome all of you once again. Coming to the topic of corporate finance, I am not a finance professional. I am basically a performance manager. I mean, most of my life, I have been managing performance of people. And one very interesting, phrases we use during the performance reviews, we try to check what are the halo effects and what are the horror effects. When the team leaders used to describe the performance of each of the employee, we try hard to find out if there is any halo error or any horn error. We call it a halo effect or horn effect. That is basically behavioral bias, if there is in assessing the people. If there is any recency error, suddenly people have performed very well and that remains in our mind and we assume that they have been performing for ages like that. It is very natural that bias creeps in human behavior, and psychologists have done a lot of research in this area. And thankfully, like our dean mentioned, thankfully from 2002 onwards, probably, it has come in a big way to the literature of finance. I remember in my corporate days, just before the board meeting, almost a week before, all the transactions will be shut and all the senior managers will be told specifically to disconnect from the external world. Because by chance we might reveal insiders information, and that can cause a huge challenge to the company. So being privy to certain insider information, we are not supposed to interact with public also. To that extent, we used to get into that. Behavioral finance has its role, particularly when person is investing, he is putting his hard-earned money. I am looking forward during these 4 or 5 days, some explanation to the very crazy kind of behavior that we are seeing in the stock markets today. Maybe I will request Mr. Tirthankar Das, if he can also throw some light on this, that while the in reality so many people are suffering and all these things are happening, lives are getting destroyed and all that, but somehow I see this, there is a behavior in the stock market which is quite bullish, and it doesn't just gel well. I mean, there is something wrong, and we know that the market capitalization is a perception issue, but who knows? There could be an issue of some behavioral bias somewhere. I do not know. If it is not there, I'll be very happy. So thank you very much. I'm very happy to address this gathering. I hope all the people who have come from all over the country for this attending this FDP program, at the end of 5 days, they will go away with a lot of takeaways from this very important faculty development program, because you carry to the classroom the learnings from the corporate and learnings from the great teachers who are going to address you. Thank you very much. What do you say?
Thank you so much, sir, for your kind words and for your enriching experience. I would now request Tirthankar Das, sir.
Can you can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Thank you so
Okay.
much, sir, for being with us.
Thank you, everyone. Hello, everyone. I hope you all can hear me clearly.
Yeah, we can.
Okay, so hope you're all doing great and looking forward to the faculty development program. Today being the inaugural day, I'd like to thank Dr. S.K. Mahapatra, Director, KIIT School of Management, Dr. S.N. Mishra, Dean of KIIT School of Management, and Dr. Shikta Singh, convener of FDP, for inviting me to share my thoughts on behavioral finance with relevance to the challenging times we all live in due to COVID, where the understanding of behavioral finance and financial cognitive biases is extremely relevant. I heartily welcome all the delegates of FDP2. I should confess that I am just a technologist and not a psychologist, but I have been on the receiving end of various investor behaviors driven by cognitive biases. So how do we perceive behavioral finance? So we perceive it as the study of the crazy ways our very flawed human brains make financial choices. If you throw people inside a brain scanner and map the parts of their brain that light up as they make tough decisions on finance, you learn that most of us believe pretty choices that we make, but nothing can be farther from the truth. All of us easily succumb to hundreds of cognitive biases that badly distort our money choices. So the question is, are we actually so bad in making money choices? Well, it's a software problem, a brain software problem, okay? The human brain has gradually evolved over the past 2 million years. And for 98% of the time, our human brain has been showing along, working hard to optimize the problems faced by the hunter-gatherers. Things like not starving, avoiding freezing to death, maybe if you're lucky, finding a good partner to pass along your DNA to the next generation. Fancy skills like agriculture and living in houses are a crazy new lifestyle for humans. Civilizations have been around for around, say, 10,000 years. Although we dress well now and we use all the latest gadgets, our very ancient brains haven't had time to evolve. This means while we inevitably run into modern problems, our badly out-of-date brain still reacts like a caveman. That is why so many people risk it, run down and get slaughtered in an attempt to navigate modern problems like investing. So behavioral finance scientists study the very specific ways our brains train to stumble when making money decisions. And as Dr. Mishra pointed out, it is an emerging genre of both psychology and finance as well. It's been found that most of us are really pretty bad at taming our often misguided instinct-driven brain, and behavioral finance research reveals the specific situations where the investor is most likely to slip and make a bad choice. So what do these biases look like? There are many biases. At this point, I would like to share my screen. Just if you could confirm that you can see my screen, that would be great. Give me one sec. Okay. Okay, can you share my, can you see my screen?
It has just started.
Oh, it just started. Okay, okay, great. Give me one sec. I'm going to orient this. I'm having some little performance issues here on my internet. Okay, so there are, as I was pointing out, there are many biases. Okay, some occur more frequently than others. Some impact the investors more than others. With respect to special situations like COVID, where human behavior has many additional challenging it, influencing it, distracting it, there are a few cognitive biases that stand out, and we'll be taking a look at those. So obviously we can't cover all these biases that we have. So let's take a look at a few of those that actually, what I believe have impacted us the most during such challenging situations like COVID. The COVID-19 pandemic has resulted in dramatic economic effects characterized by excessive stock price volatility and market crash. According to the IMF, the world economy will face the worst recession since the Great Depression, and the total output loss of 2020 and 2021 could exceed $9 trillion. The traditional finance paradigm, which suggests that markets and humans are perfectly rational and have perfect self-control, fails to explain such dramatic volatility. This volatility, however, can be explained by the behavioral finance paradigm. Behavioral finance suggests that investors and markets are not fully rational, and that investors are influenced by their biases and cognitive errors. It comprises two main components: psychology, which explains the fallibilities in human behavior, and limits to arbitrage, which argues that in an economy of rational and irrational traders, irrationality could have been sustained and significant impact. Okay. So we would like to have here highlighted some common cognitive issues and phenomena pertaining to behavioral finance as observed during the COVID-19 induced global crisis. In this session, let's explore some such phenomena from a behavioral finance lens and discuss some cognitive errors and biases as observed during the COVID-19 induced global crisis. So I'm going to move on to the next slide. So these are the 5 specific areas where I would like to focus in the first few minutes of this session. And so where we're covering cognitive errors and biases that include overconfidence, representation bias, risk aversion, herding behavior, and availability bias. We will explore each of these phenomena from the perspective of psychology and evaluate the relevance to financial institutions and markets and the COVID-19 induced global crisis. Oops. Yeah. The overconfidence phenomena is a prevalent psychological theory that is comprised of 4 main facets: miscalibration, better than average effect, illusion of control, and unrealistic optimism. Overconfidence has also been shown to lead the stock market and price volatility. Since volatility is a prime characteristic of the markets during the COVID-19 crisis, the 4 facets of overconfidence have relevance to behavioral finance and its implications for the financial markets in 2020 and 2021. Miscalibration overconfidence is a specific type of miscalibration, a cognitive bias in which the confidence is higher than accuracy. Overconfidence, from the perspective of this facet, has shown to be very relevant in the field of finance. The cognitive bias is glaringly reflected in the GDP growth projections across the globe as the pandemic became more widespread. Specifically in the case of India, GDP growth projections for 2020 were miscalibrated as much higher than the actual likely figure, even as investors witnessed the crisis unfold in other developing and developed nations. Most of you would know that Moody's revised its GDP growth projections for India multiple times from February through April last year, slashing the projections from 5.4% on February 17th April 28th. The growth rate projections for India remained relatively high, even though India was at risk of importing COVID-19. The next one, better than average effect, is a phenomena where people possess an unrealistically positive view of themselves and consider themselves as superior to an average representative of their groups in the respective field. In the context of financial markets, better than average effect has been shown to correspond with high trading volumes as traders consider their information as better compared to their peers. More specifically, overconfident CEOs and managers consider their abilities to be superior, and this has shown to have an influence on corporate policies as well as overinvestment. These biases lead overconfident banks to ease lending standards, increase lending amounts, increase leverage, and incur additional debt. As soon as a financial crisis commences, however, overconfident banks suffer higher capital losses, more severe drop in their net worth, and a higher likelihood of CEO turnover and failures than for non-confident banks. Overconfident financial institutions, as characterized by the riskiness of the investments prior to the 2020 stock market crash, are therefore likely to suffer higher losses and failures post the crisis. This shall also set a precedent for the coming years, which would be then marked by more conservative and low-risk investments. Illusion of control. This is a cognitive bias where people often tend to believe that they are able to influence events that may purely be governed by chance. Stress, competition, choice, environment, and familiarity are conditions that have shown conducive to the development of an illusion of control and consequently as maladaptive for traders. This facet was particularly characteristic of the 2008 financial crisis, the overconfidence in the risk management models that caused the financial bubble to burst in an example of illusion of control. Also, the revelation that the market underestimated the impact of COVID-19 outbreak on the firms in 2020. Unrealistic optimism is an optimism bias that relates strongly to the better than average effect, where people typically believe that they are more likely to experience positive events and less likely to experience negative events, especially if the events are perceived as controllable. In the context of finance, for example, people believe that their chances of achieving financial success are higher than others. Optimism bias was prevalent in the current COVID-19 scenario, even as banks witnessed their profits plunge and expected billions in losses during the 2020 stock market crash. Investors remained optimistic as they expected the Federal Reserve System of the United States slash rates, buy bonds, provide aid, and backdrop credit markets. So those are pretty much the biases around overconfidence. And the next one I would like to now cover is representation bias. Okay, this is a cognitive bias in which people associate a thing with its analogs and forecast its future based on that of the analogs, specifically horizontal representation bias. In behavioral finance literature, this bias has been shown to impact the quality of investments. Investors often consider past returns as representations of potential future returns and therefore have been found to make decisions based on the bias that past price trend is representative of future price trend, which we all know is never the case. The 2020 stock market crash is frequently compared to the 2008 financial crisis and the Great Depression of the 1930s. Such comparisons are examples of representation bias too. In fact, biased comparisons may negatively impact the markets in the long run, since they merely are sentiment-driven representations and not actualities on the ground. The next bias I'm going to cover is the risk aversion. Risk aversion is the phenomenon of reluctance to seeking higher risks and instead preferring low-risk alternatives. Risk aversion is known to be significantly affected during exceptional situations. During the COVID-19 pandemic and the resulting 2020 stock market crash, financial risk aversion is bound to change as well. This is clear evidence that risk aversion has increased during COVID-19 global crisis. Okay. Risk aversion in Wuhan, where COVID originated, substantially increased with the rapid spread of COVID-19 in the city. Gold considered a safe investment, and it gained in value as risk aversion increased. The price of gold increased by 7% in US to 12.72% in India in INR from February the 2nd, 2020 to May 1st, 2020 during the financial crisis, hence providing additional evidence that risk aversion has increased as a function of COVID-19 global crisis. The next cognitive bias I'm covering is on herding behavior, very, very prominent, and we see this a lot in investment banking. This is a phenomenon where multiple people make the same decision in sequential fashion. This is a theory characterizing herding behavior, where traders discount the private information and instead they are trading in accordance with the observed trades. In the 2020 COVID-19, herding behavior of investors in global markets continued throughout the crisis to the later stages. Interestingly, cryptocurrencies markets did not observe any significant change in herding behavior, at least until the end of March 2020. Although cryptocurrencies markets are tied to global economic activity, they are decentralized and hence may not be directly comparable to traditional financial markets in terms of herding behavior. There is a lot of research going on in this area, and further research is required to evaluate the existence of unusual herding behavior in cryptocurrencies. The last It's not moving. Give me one sec. Yeah. The last cognitive bias I'm covering here that's relevant to investment banking and financial institutions prominently is something called as the availability bias. This is a cognitive error whereby judgments are biased based on the suitable instances that come to mind. In the context of behavioral finance, both investors and financial institutions believe in the risk management capabilities of the banks after a long streak of positive outcomes. The overestimation of the risk management capabilities and placement of excessive trust in investors and the markets further leads to an underestimation of true risk. Eventually, there is increased market entry, more buyers of loans, access to low-cost funding, lax regulation, and high-risk investments, all of which eventually leads to a crisis. Public trust in financial institutions and markets have increased in recent years, long after the 2008 financial crisis. While literature on public trust in financial institutions after the 2020 stock market crash is limited and characterized primarily by uncertainty, it is crucial to recognize the availability bias and readjust expectations as investors. Financial market turbulence and crisis have shown to result in a significant drop in citizens' trust, and recency bias drives investors to give more emphasis on recent investments. Therefore, if the market impact further significantly impacts financial institutions in the upcoming months, there will be a drop in trust in the financial system that would shape the markets in the upcoming years. So in conclusion of these five cognitive biases, and in the time of a global crisis such as the ongoing pandemic, we tend to focus on what is most easily accessible and consume information at its face value while we adjust to the crisis. This is ironic, since a global crisis is precisely when we need to be most careful. It is crucial to consider our subconscious biases and decide further action accordingly. There are many more cognitive errors beyond behavioral finance that we make in our daily lives. Reminding us of our psychological shortcomings will help us better navigate the crisis. I would like to spend some time to delve into deeper psychological aspects of cognitive biases due to COVID-19 and impacting investor behavior. Investors have a new set of behavioral trapdoors to avoid. Knowing what these unconscious and often irrational tendencies are and why we sometimes fall prey to them can help you dance around them. If you have spent any time on social media in the last few months, we have inevitably seen a host of breathless articles opining how coronavirus will change this forever, that forever. While the impact of COVID-19 is undoubtedly dramatic, it is also human nature to fall prey to several behavioral traps while predicting the future. Understanding this, the impact of COVID-19 on investors' behavior will be as varied as the situations in which those investors find themselves. In this final part of the session, we'll examine the primacy and recency effect and how they might impact the investment landscape of the future. So we're basically going to be covering recency, which is the quality or state of being recent, and primacy, which is the quality or state of being early. And let's see, one second. So to understand the primacy and recency effect, I would like us in this virtual world to engage in a simple game, okay? So I'll try to go a little slow here so that we all sort of get the impact of this. So let's interact. So I'll ask you to give yourself just 10 seconds
There are responses in the chat box.
Was there a question? Sorry.
You did put forth a 10-second game, so there are responses in the chat box.
Okay, cool. So what I'm saying is, yeah, and the I'm just trying to see, yeah. So we tend the point I'm trying to prove here is that most of us remember the first few words and the last few words in the string. That's something the psychologists call the primacy and recency effect. So the last part of an interaction is not limited to the grocery list or magic tricks. It's a core part of our lives. Okay, it's a very important part of how we learn and has implications of how we invest as well. We are unduly impacted by what has happened lately in COVID-19, a reality that will impact all market participants as long as coronavirus and the associated economic havoc remains a current threat. So, which means that we may have decades of investment experience, but not all of those years are weighted equally. The more recent the fear, the more skewed the appraisal of risk reward. So what we've now seen is both recent and early experiences tend to have outsized mindshare, where we consider how to make financial decisions. To help us make this more vivid, I would like to play along, request you to play along with me one more time. Okay, let's imagine this scenario. Okay, you're looking for a tutor to teach science to your young child. Okay, a close friend of yours has found two candidates and describes them to you. You must choose one of the two, right? So tutor one is described as intelligent, industrious, impulsive, critical, stubborn, and envious. Tutor two is described as envious, stubborn, critical, impulsive, industrious, and intelligent. So who do you choose? Well, being the bright person that you are, you may have already deciphered that these two lists of adjectives are identical. But the odds are you had a strong, super strong gut reaction that the first tutor is more desirable. So how do we explain this? This is due to something called irrational primacy effect, or the tendency to give greater weight to information that comes earlier in a list or sentence. It turns out what's true of communication is also true of our lives. The lessons that we learn early in life are some of the most lasting. Now, the neurological roots of this psychological reality were illustrated powerfully in a study where investors were placed in two groups with different market conditions and then mapped their brains using EEG, which is an electroencephalogram technology. Now, group one began in a market that showed steady positive growth, and group two was placed in a more volatile market. After the participants spent time trading and learning the market, they switched conditions with those in the growth market entering the volatile market and vice versa. What was observed next was fascinating and surprising. People used different parts of their brains to make future investment decisions based on their early experience with the market. Those in group one, who had started with an orderly, predictable market, organized their brain activity to create rules and search for universally applicable principles of the market. In the words of the researchers, decision-making would be supported by comparison of predicted and actual pricing, and it would be driven by rule-based reasoning. Conversely, those who began in the more chaotic condition, group 2, utilized entirely separate parts of the brain to cope with the volatility of the market. Since the volatility of the market did not lend itself to the formation of consistent rules, those in group 2 learned to make situational decisions, and their improvisational style carried over to the calmer market. They were effectively scarred by the bad experiences in the market and were never able to fully search for rules and best practices, even when they became more available. For many of life's activities, it makes sense that early imprinting on the brain should inform future decisions. It is adaptive for a child born into a war-torn country to program himself for constant vigilance from an early age, just as it is sensible for a child from Punjab to be joyful and carefree. Variables of place and safety are likely to persist, but market conditions are constantly in flux and can lead us to learn the wrong lessons. An investor who begins investing in the age of COVID-19 may arrive at an inappropriately cruel appraisal of the market, whereas one who started in the early 1990s may characterize them as more consistent and more profitable than has historically been the case. Legendary investor Jeremy Grantham was asked in an interview what he felt investors would learn from the great financial crisis of 2008-2009, to which he replied, "In the short term, a lot; in the medium term, a little; in the long term, nothing at all." That would be the historical precedent. Grantham's answer is spot on because it anticipates recency bias and the behavioral tendency to project the current situation into the future indefinitely. When investors look around now, they see sickness, economic uncertainty, widespread joblessness, and a variety of inconvenient societal disruptions. While it's most certainly true that some vestiges of COVID-19 will be with us for years, like strict hand washing, please, it's likewise true the day will come when we once again gather in large crowds, commute to offices, and shake hands. To think the future will look like the present moment is to ignore the singular nature of what we currently are experiencing. It's human nature to assume that all we see is all we will ever be, but markets operate on a more forward-looking bias and realize that this too shall pass. We can drive the best behaviors in investing by learning from experience. I'm not going to go through this in great detail, but I will share this deck with you. It says basically, what do we learn from experience, and how do we capitalize that to be the best investor? Now, to be the best investor, we learn to put probability above stories. We rationalize to prevent overreactions. We get to know ourselves, and then outsmart ourselves, right? We think about the strategic orientation of investments now. We also include sustainable aspects in our considerations, and we learn to hope for a brighter future, brighter tomorrow, which is what investing is in future is all about. Now, certain of us will have our investing behavior irrevocably altered, either because we were personally impacted by COVID or because it has impacted us at a formative period in our development. But to become the best investor we can be, we must learn to put probability above stories, the large numbers above personal experience. We would also rationalize to prevent overreaction, get to know yourself, and then outsmart yourself. Think about the strategic orientation of your investments now, and also include sustainable aspects of your considerations. Most of all, we must learn to hope for a brighter tomorrow, which is fundamentally what investing is all about. with so many cognitive biases influencing our money decisions, if there is one unanimous conclusion among various behavioral financial researchers is this: it is not the markets that torpedo most people's financial future. The most critical obstacle in financial investing is one aspect, which is us. This is not United States, by the way, US, it's just us, okay? And the reckless meddling of our instinct-driven brain tends to do. If you look at the 100-year history of the Dow Jones or any international exchange, you'll see it's pretty easy to make a lot of money. Invest in a diversified portfolio, then leave it alone. Stop looking at it, stop messing with it. But we just can't help ourselves, can we? When markets skyrocket or take a nosedive, our instinct-driven brain takes over. We are exuberant, we panic, our flight instincts take over, and we do stupid things. My understanding is this group of educators and professionals will go a long way in helping people recognize the signs when an impulsive decision is likely to be made. The real pearls of wisdom, I'm sure, will be gained through the next few days of this FTP program, with all the experts sharing their knowledge and views and experience. I thank you for all this opportunity to share my thoughts and views on this important and relevant area. I'd like to thank Dr. S.K. Mahapatra, Director, Kitt School of Management, and Dr. Shikta Singh, Dr. S.N. Mishra for inviting me to share my views with you. I hope you have many enlightening sessions during this FDP, even in virtual mode, and play a key role in helping everyone, helping everyone develop the faculty of making rational money decisions. I thank you, everyone. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Das. After a long time, I heard, a very impactful, lecture by a corporate professional, so well knitted, and I don't think any single word was out of place or out of context. It sets the perfect tone for our FDP. Thank you very much. I'm very grateful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm glad. I was able to contribute and be a part of this. I do appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Anabhir Tirtha Dada. Thank you so much for taking up my invitation and coming over here. It was really, really your wisdom. You have shared it with so passionately. I would request our participants if they have any questions.
Look at the chat box, Sikta.
Chat box have no questions, only compliments.
One sec.
Mr. P. Muthuswamy wants to raise the hand.
I would like to say, sure.
And, do you have any questions?
I think he's muted. That's why we are not able to hear.
Okay, they can unmute themselves.
Sir, can you throw some light on primacy and recency effect?
Okay. So essentially, we did cover it. Okay. Is there anything specific you want to know about it? Because I mean, it's the primacy and recency is quite fundamental to the way we think about events in the stock market or in the global scenario while we take financial decisions, right? It's about what we gather in our mind, in terms of what's recently impacted us, and things like. So, is there anything specific you want me to cover that I have not?
Sir, is there any
Or I can just
primacy
quickly
sector?
go through. Could you repeat that, please? I couldn't hear you.
Sir, is there any tool or anything like efficient market hypothesis theory to measure the primacy and recency effects?
Oh, absolutely. So I don't know if there is any tool that's available widespread for everyone, but financial institutions like JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, and I'm sure there are others all over the world. Okay, we do have tools in terms of algorithms, in terms of machine learning, artificial intelligence, that gather a lot of historical data, okay, and pull in data lakes from which you can actually infer intelligence and aid in your decision making, right? It's not just primacy and recency, it's hundreds of biases that go around, depending on the circumstance. There are algorithms and artificial intelligence that's coded into machine learning that helps traders actually navigate through these complicated scenarios and biases to make their decisions. Did I answer your question?
Thank you, sir.
Okay, sir, I have got a question. Am I audible?
You're so welcome.
Okay.
Yes, Jaya.
Recently,
Yes, Jaya, please go ahead.
recently we can see that the Indian capital market, it has actually reached 50,000 players, right? So, despite these pandemic situations, what do you think is the reason for such a surge in capital market? Is it some kind of herding behavior,
one of the biases,
or bubbles?
if you remember, I covered, right? Where? Sorry, can you hear me?
I can hear you, sir. I can hear you.
Okay. So you absolutely you're absolutely true. And that's one of the things that I had I covered in a couple of biases. That's okay. I'm feeling homesick now listening to those honks, traffic honks and stuff. Okay. That was so Jaya, the point I had made when I had spoken about availability bias, right? That sort of results in overestimation of the risk management capabilities and placement of excessive trust in investors. So which results in the markets further leading to an underestimation of true risk, right? So and this underestimation of true risk, basically because of this, there is an increased market entry, there are more buyers for loans, there is access to low cost funding and lax regulation, and also investors look forward to other events like the interest rates coming down, the federal rules and regulations being more relaxed, and things like that. So that, even that is not a reality, that itself, there's so many of those things, or so many of those biases that work in conjunction to hike up the market quite a bit. Okay, and you'll see that you will have corrections, you'll have changes as and when some of those biases are either proven wrong or are true, right? So for example, if you have an economic report, you have a unemployment report, you have a GDP report that comes out that either confirms the bias or that goes against it, based on reality, then the market takes a correction. Did I answer your question, Jaya?
Yes, sir. That means we can actually expect some corrections. It may go down, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
You will see corrections when fragments of reality come through actual
Yes.
reports and things like that. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
And again, these are not very I would say uh, mm, uh, these aspects are very much accessible to professional traders, but not available to the common man who invests, right? I mean, nowadays everyone invests online, even the common man does, right? But my hope and understanding is gradually you would have all these tools, all the artificial intelligence and machine learning available to the public, the common man who's trading, so that they can actually take a money decision based on uh, the relevance of all these dynamic factors and cognitive biases. Okay, so that will be a fair day for everyone, where the traders are on the same page as the common man. They have the same levels of information, same levels of analysis, same levels of learning available to them to take their money decisions.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome.
Sir, I just have a curiosity rather than a question to know that I
Okay.
have seen there has been a lot of conflict going between the convection and finance people and the behavioral side. So as being there for a long 25 years into this industry, did you ever realize this biases affecting you while making your investment decisions?
I mean, the biases basically exist because of so many factors, right? If you think about it, right? I mean, behavioral finance people, go into research, and and frankly speaking, a lot is still left to be unearthed. I don't think this is a very mature area, so it sort of poses a lot of opportunity to do further research into the mindsets of people, and things change based on economic policies and economic decisions and global crises and stuff like that, right? So I think the variance between what behavioral finance scientists believe or find progressively, and what traders, investment banking traders, or a normal trader exercises on the trading floor or on an online trading platform, there will always be a difference. There will always be a delta, right? And so a normal investor, even a professional trader, okay, they are so driven by these cognitive biases, okay, they will never be in sync with what the reality is. And that is why you have machine learning and AI now helping them to show a more seamless trend from their imaginary biases into what is actually really happening in the global system. So the gap will decrease, I would say, through machine learning and things like that. But I think, until we reach that stage, there will always be a gap, I think, because, the human brain is so brilliant and massively complicated. It'll take us a while before we reduce this gap. I don't think it'll ever be zero. That there will always be a gap. Did I address your question properly, Shikta?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, Dr. Shrish.
Any other questions? Any other comments? Any other concerns?
I see
Sir,
you.
good,
Yeah.
sir, good evening. I'm Dr. Srishti Gangale. Can I ask you a question?
Absolutely. Happy to answer if I can.
Sir,
Hi,
I'm little
Shrishti.
confused about the cryptocurrencies market is little stable and now it is showing quite a few fluctuation in the cryptocurrency. So in henceforth, I'm coming to focusing more to the behavioral changes in cryptocurrency. So sir, if you can focus few of that areas, few point which really need to be highlight in near future.
So cryptocurrency is a ever emerging area now, right? It's very new, I would say, and as I pointed out, there's much research happening right now and a lot to be done. Okay, I mean the level of maturity in understanding cryptocurrency and the biases around anything that impacts cryptocurrency. Right now, it's in a very, I would say, initial stages. Okay, that's why you see drops in 30%, 40%, even 50%. Now we're like, Bitcoin is almost 50% below what it was just a month back, if you think about it. And guess what? I mean, yeah. So you can actually buy Bitcoin right now because this thing is going to go up again by another 100%.
Right.
So the reason is Bitcoin or cryptocurrency or any other currency. Okay, some of them actually have strong fundamentals. Okay, it is not a magic thing that's happening, right? They do have fundamentals. That is a lot of investment happening. That is a lot of relevance to what cryptocurrency or other frameworks do in terms of what Bitcoin does, what Ethereum does, right? So I think it would be prudent for a crypto investor also to exercise a similar degree of patience and understanding, okay, to go with the flow of cryptocurrency. Okay, so instead of smaller hikes and falls in the stock market, cryptos will have larger hikes and larger falls. Ultimately, you will make money, right? But definitely the psychological aspects are limited right now in terms of how things impact cryptocurrency, because practically speaking, a lot of people do not have that level of understanding. Cryptocurrency right now, the bias is, hey, person A is made so much money in crypto last week. I have to get into it. People don't have much clue about how crypto works, how the framework works, okay, how the unified ledger works. Nothing, right? They just want to get into it and make money, and that is the common man's perception, right? So definitely a lot to be understood and a lot of research to be made before you can actually before you can actually provide some form of relevance to the biases impacting cryptocurrency.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Got it.
Thank you so much.
We have few comments in the chat box, so it's already getting 7:15. I think you're in a rush up with the office.
I think you should close now.
Yeah. So that is what all the other answers, which I will be just sending it through mail to Tirthankar sir, and it will be communicated. Sir, thank you so much.
I mean, feel free to I would say feel free to forward me those questions, Shikha.
Sure, sir. Sure.
And I'll be more than happy to spend some time and answer, especially any of the references I might have made in terms of numbers, in terms of trends, in terms of analysis. I would be happy to provide those references, and so that people can go and further deep dive and read into those aspects which I covered. And I think someone is asking for mail ID. You can channel everything through Shikha, I would say, and I would Shikta is family to me, and we are very, very proud of what she does professionally. And I would give my best wishes to this team of delegates from all over India who are participating in this markedly uniformed and relevant convention gathering. And I wish you all the best for the next few days. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mother, for sharing your wisdom so passionately, yet humbly. So this is a small token of love and sense of appreciation from our university on behalf of our founder, sir, Dr. Professor Achyuta Samanta, and on behalf of our director, sir, Dr. Saroj Mahapatra, Dean, sir, Dr. S.N. Mishra. I thank you so much for finding out your time and coming us over here. Yes, we have not met for such a long time. Pranam Dada, I am just giving my gratitude from here. Hope you'll come
Thank you.
soon. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It means a lot.
Thank you. Thank you so
sir.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
So
Thank
we are
you.
ending for the day today. We'll be starting tomorrow sharp at 10 o'clock with our session.